It's November, so every game is big, but there's not another game in the country that matches this one today in Tuscaloosa. Alabama hosting top-ranked Mississippi State. Fans of both teams are ready to go, and we are too, on Crimson Tide Kickoff, which starts right now.
Crimson Tide Kickoff, presented by Alpha Insurance.
And you're looking live at the Walk of Champions. Coming up in about an hour and a half, Nick Saban will lead his fourth-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide into Bryant-Denny Stadium. It's a place where Alabama has been unbeatable in 2014. In fact, going all the way back to 2012. And they hope that streak continues today. The Crimson Tide Kickoff presented by Alpha Insurance. I'm Gary Harris. We're with you until noon, previewing yet another huge Alabama football game, this time against undefeated and top-ranked Mississippi State. Now here's a look at what's coming up on the program. We've got a great guest lineup, including the leader of the Crimson Tide Athletics Department, Bill Battle. Milliseconds this week with an Alabama native, Derunya Wilson, who hopes to spoil the Tide's day. He's now a Bulldog. Former players Marvin Constant and Mark McMillian will join us, and Chris Stewart from the Crimson Tide Sports Network also on the program. And let's start, as we always do, with Bama headlines.
For the latest on the Crimson Tide, you don't need the newspaper. You need Bama headlines.
At this point of the season, everybody's a little bit beat up, and Alabama no exception. T.J. Yeldon has been battling an ankle. He got it dinged at the end of the LSU game. He has practiced this week, expected to play, but not anywhere close to 100%. He'll be a big factor, though, today in a very physical game. His availability, we'll have to see how much he plays. Well, for the 31st time in school history, ESPN Game Day is on campus for this one. Alabama has an 18-12 record in those games, and now this year the only appearance was on the road in Oxford at Ole Miss. Hopefully the result today won't be the same as that one. If you're curious, the picks just ended there on the show, and most of the staff went with Alabama, including Lee Corso, who put on the elephant head. So Corso picking Alabama against Mississippi State. Well, it's time now to welcome in the other members of the CTKO crew. Chelsea Barton is standing by on the quad. Meteorologist Richard Scott is manning the Walk of Champions. And we'll first head down to Chelsea. How are things, Chelsea, looking on the quad?
Hey, Gary, what a beautiful day out here in Tuscaloosa for this highly anticipated matchup between the #1 ranked Mississippi State Bulldogs and the Alabama Crimson Tide, who right now sit at #5. As you can see, the quad is buzzing with shades of red today. Lots of tents mixed with crimson and maroon, because really the two schools are only about 85 miles apart. And you know something else that's definitely present out here today? The sound of State fans ringing their cowbells. Now, I'll have Bama fans take on that noisy tradition coming up a little bit later in the show, plus our Krispy Kreme tailgaters of the week. For now, live on the University of Alabama's quad, I'm Chelsea Barton. Gary, back to you guys.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. We'll check in with you again in just a little bit. But right now, let's head to WVUA's chief meteorologist, Richard Scott, who can tell us how cold we're going to be today in the fourth quarter. Richard, it's looking like it's going to be a chilly one.
Yeah, really cold right now, Gary. We'll warm up just a little bit today. We've got lots of sunshine that'll help heat temperatures up some. We'll check out things live with the Tuscaloosa Tower camera, see what things are happening. In fact, where you see all those people out there, that's ESPN's College Game Day. We are right in the middle of that action. We got 44 in Tuscaloosa. That's a high so far today, but it was cold this morning, 26. But we will be warming up just a little bit. Let's go over to the temperature map, and we are improving some across the state. Montgomery already up to 49 and low 50s in Dothan. We'll head up into the low 50s a little later on today with that full dose of sunshine. Go over to the satellite and radar. And one thing you notice, hey, no cloud cover yet, but there's some clouds building off to our west. Those move in later on tonight, and some rain does become possible tomorrow. So all-important game day forecast, let's check it out. Alabama taking on the Bulldogs. 2:30 kickoff, around 52 at kickoff. The temperature slowly fall, though, I think back in the upper 40s by the end of things at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So, Gary, it will be cool to wrap up things at Bryant-Denny. Some of those clouds start to move in. But it is busy out here on campus with College Game Day here in town, Gary.
Thank you, Richard. It's a little chilly but beautiful day. We'll check back with you in just a little bit. Well, we're just getting cranked up good here on CTKO, brought to you by Alpha Insurance. Coming up, we'll find out who our tailgaters of the week are, and later, Jen Chapman will break down those Mississippi State cowbells with Peter Crank. This is going to be interesting. But next, we'll bring in a man who knows a thing or two about the Crimson Tide athletic program, the director of athletics, Bill Battle. Special guest, that's after the break. Stay with us. Crimson Tide Kickoff live from Tuscaloosa returns right after this.
Now, this week's Tailgaters of the Game, brought to you by Krispy Kreme Donuts.
Welcome back to Crimson Tide Kickoff. I'm Chelsea Barton out here on the quad with our tailgaters of the week. I'm here with Miss Lee Perrette of Franklin, Tennessee. You guys are rolling with the Tide today.
We are.
Yes, we are. Tell me how long you guys have been tailgating here.
Since about 1983. We went to the university here and graduated and got married, and my husband joined the Navy, so we've traveled all over, and every time we get back in the area, we love to come watch the Tide roll.
Well, what an exciting game we're in store for today. And I see not everybody's rolling with the Tide. We have an oddball here.
Now we have a son who attends the university here, and he has some friends who are visiting us from Starkville, Mississippi. And we've got Owen and Ben, and we hope to show them a lot of hospitality today, but we hope they don't mind that we're probably going to beat them.
I think so, too. And we have a dog here, not a bulldog.
No, this is a Great Dane.
Who is this? What's his name?
This is Deacon.
Deacon. And I see he has a chew toy. That is a bulldog.
Be a bulldog. Deacon knows what to do with a bulldog. What do you do with a bulldog, Deacon? There you go.
Yes, sir. Well, it's my pleasure to present you guys with a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts each month for an entire year from our sponsors, Krispy Kreme Donuts. I hope you guys enjoy them. And can I get a roll, Tide?
Roll
Tide! Roll!
Hail State.
Thanks, Gary. Back to you guys.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. It's my pleasure now to introduce the esteemed athletics director at the University of Alabama, Coach Bill Battle. Coach, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Great. Good to be here.
I know you got a lot on your plate, but I guess this is the fun part of the job, a day like today, huh?
Well, this is what you work 365 days a year to get to games like this that mean so much. And, you know, both teams are playing well. Both teams are highly ranked. It's a beautiful day. There are fans from both sides here just having fun and enjoying the spirit of college football, which is more popular than it's ever been.
You got so many teams that go into a season, and this is what they're hoping to put themselves in position to do, which is have a chance to make their season meaningful, win a conference championship, get in the playoff, and Alabama's done that so consistently under Nick Saban. It's amazing, really.
It is amazing. Coach Saban came in and inherited a program that was down. Didn't take long to get it turned around, and it's been back at the top ever since. Either, you know, winning 3 out of 5 national championships is pretty incredible. Having a chance to be 4 out of 6. We're a little bit on the outside, but we're right where we want to be, and it's been an exciting season.
You know, it's a gauntlet in this league. You survive in Baton Rouge, physical game, guys beat up. You come right back this week and you're playing the #1 team in the country.
You know, the SEC is a really tough league anyway, but the SEC West this year is absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, when you had 6 teams in the top 25 in the country and 4 of them were in the top 10 at one time, it's tough, and we got to play all of those guys.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the LSU game was a war, man. It was a tough physical game the whole day, and it was right down to the wire and won on the last play, and this one may go down the same way.
There's work to be done, but this is the first year of the 4-team national playoff. From an athletic department standpoint, what would it mean for Alabama to be a part of that?
It would mean the same thing it meant to be at the top of the 2 when there were 2-team playoffs in the BCS. The BCS did a great thing. It was highly criticized, but to me, it did a great thing for college football because it allowed #1 and #2 to play against each other. There was a time or two that there was a little controversy. There was a lot of controversy below that, but there wasn't much controversy at the top, and that's what it was designed to do. So it made the regular season of college football more important and more valuable and more exciting than any other sport in America, in my opinion. And this just adds fuel to that fire.
Yeah.
Now there are 4 teams, and the coffee table talk is amazing, and everybody's trying to pick and look out and see where they're going to be later, and they're all worried about it. But if you just take it one day at a time, it all settles out just like it did with the BCS.
Who knows? We might have 8 here in the near future. I
hope not, but that's okay.
As I said, you got a lot on your plate. I guess in the athletic business these days, if you're not building something, you're falling behind. You got a lot of projects. First and foremost, Sewell Thomas Stadium, the renovations. Amazing how much they've already done. Talk about where that's at, and you know, the fact that Alabama will have a first-class baseball facility in 2016.
Well, this is how much I know about it. When I first got here, I said, man, this is a great baseball stadium. And they said, this is an awful baseball stadium. They said, you know, this is 12th or 13th in the league. And sure enough, we did studies, and we saw where we needed to be, and we laid it out. We've got plans for a beautiful stadium. You can start to see now that the batting facility is coming up, and the brick on the wall, and the design is, you can just start to get a feel for how beautiful it's going to be.
When I interviewed you here recently, Inside the Zone, I asked you about the fact that you were living a good life there in Atlanta. You didn't have to take this job, but you did. Are you enjoying yourself, and is it challenging and rewarding all at the same time?
It's very challenging and very rewarding both. Yeah, I am glad that I'm here. I never wanted to be an athletic director, but because I didn't think it was a very fun job. It's not that fun of a job, but at this time and at this place, for me, it's a great job, and I'm delighted and excited to be here. Every day is not fun when you have 525 student athletes and almost 300 staff. There's something good and bad going on every day, but there's more good than bad, and we got great people here.
I guess for you, it was like your former coach said, Mama called. And when she called, you answered.
You know, I wrestled with it for a week and finally decided if I don't do this, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. And I would have, and I'm very glad that I did it. And I'm glad my wife, Mary, decided to take this adventure with me, and she has been 100% behind it.
All right, we know football is out front. It leads the way here, but there's so many sports, men's and women's. There's a desire to be competitive in all of them, and for the most part, it looks like that's where Alabama's at right now. Every team that fields, you know, a varsity squad here has a chance to win.
Well, Mal Moore did a great job in building facilities and in hiring coaches and hiring staff. I inherited a really good, solid program in all areas, but you either get better or you get worse, and, you know, you can't maintain. So we've tried to come in and keep the pedal to the metal, and we do have great coaches. We're recruiting great players. We need to improve in things all over, but we've got the right people, I think, on the bus to take us where we want to go.
All right, final question. It's kind of a personal question. I've always wanted to ask you this. When you left Tennessee, I think you were 35, maybe 36. You had already won 59 games in an era where they only played 11, 12 if you went to a bowl game. Why did you not coach again?
You know, I had some chances to go back in. I had done that all my life. Up to that point, I'd never spent much time around my kids. I decided that was a point in time that I wanted to take a break and see how other people lived. I had friends that couldn't stay out of coaching. I didn't know if I could stay out of coaching. I went and looked around for about a year, which I had the privilege to do, and ended up going to work in a little company in Selma, Alabama that ended up being very successful, giving me a great business educational experience and allowing me to start my own company, and bought it out and moved it to Atlanta. So, you know, I was prepared. I was really expecting that I probably would go back in coaching, but one thing led to another, and it was very fortuitous that what happened. Yeah. And Alabama was our first client in our licensing business, and I was really glad that we had started that company my first year last year as an athletic director, because CLC paid the University of Alabama almost $10 million. So
worked out for everybody. And tell us real quickly the story. I think you hooked up with Jack Nicklaus early on too.
Well, we went from 2 companies doing $12 million a year to 10 companies doing $60 million a year, and one of the companies, fueled by a massive sale over in Saudi Arabia, but one of the companies we bought was a golf putter company, and we had trouble selling putters. We were told either get in or out of the golf business. Went down to meet with Jack Nicklaus to talk about that. Never heard about licensing, learned about licensing, became licensees of Nicklaus, and and then learned about licensing, and it just evolved from there. It is a long story, but it's a good one.
It's a good one. Well, it's worked out great for Alabama to have you back. Thank you so much, Coach.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
We appreciate it. All right, much more coming up on the show, including this.
And coming up on Crimson Tide Kickoff, we're in enemy territory, Starkville, Mississippi, talking to a player who was almost a member of the Crimson Tide. How he went from Roll Tide to Hail State. That's coming up right after the break.
And it's a chilly day on the Walk of Champions. Stay with us. We'll also go behind enemy lines when we return to Crimson Tide Kickoff. We roll on right after this timeout.
Scared to go? Get ready to go behind enemy lines.
This is the moment that all Mississippi State fans have been dreaming of, the opportunity to beat Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide. But it's not too often that the #1 ranked team in the country is a heavy underdog going into a game, but MSU really wouldn't have it any other way, as they look to become the first team since 1957 to win at Alabama and at LSU in the same season.
They've been in the position before, and so I think that gives you some confidence as a player. When you're walking into a big stadium, a hard place to go play with a loud, hostile crowd. The fact that you've been in that position before, you've played in those circumstances before, gives you confidence.
We're back to the team we were at the beginning of the season, the team we were earlier in the season, where nobody expected us to win, didn't think we could win, and we were the underdogs in all those games. So, it feels good to be back to that rather than us expected to win by a huge margin. That's what we're looking for. That's the reason we came to play for Mississippi State on big stage play against the ACC opponent, which is the best conference in college football. Point blank, period.
SEC teams are 1-4 this year after facing LSU. That lone team to win was Mississippi State. Could be 2-4 though if Alabama wins this Saturday. But will the Bulldogs silence the critics and rise to the occasion? We'll have to wait and see, as we will all be in the presence of history one way or another on Saturday in Tuscaloosa. For Crimson Tide Kickoff, I'm Robbie Donahoe.
Thanks, Robbie. We apologize for some audio difficulties with that story. Here are the numbers for Prescott, and they don't blow you away at first glance, especially the interceptions. 7 of them, but on the ground, he is a load. Nearly 800 yards and 11 touchdowns. It's like having an extra fullback back there. It's Tebow-esque. When he turns it upfield, he is tough to handle. Well, another nice compliment to the offense is wide receiver Darunya Wilson. He's emerged as one of Dak's favorite targets, and he hails from Birmingham, Alabama. In this week's Milliseconds, B.J. Milliken talks to the big man who now wears MSU maroon instead of Alabama crimson.
Here with Birmingham native Darunya Wilson. Darunya, grew up an Alabama fan. What's it like kind of crossing the border to go to school at Mississippi State? Any kind of backlash from maybe the family?
Well, they had to, get out of being Alabama fans when I first arrived here at Mississippi State, and it's been wonderful. Now we have a lot of people. Well, I have a lot of people in my family that's, it's true maroon Mississippi State fans now at this point. But kind of my first year, they had to go with Alabama for a couple of games.
There you go. Sometimes it takes a long time to break the habit, right?
Yeah.
And coming down to a decision, when you had to make a decision to go to play college, obviously Alabama was a love of yours. Auburn and Tennessee also had offered. What was the main factor in having you choose Mississippi State?
I just kind of felt like it was home for me. Being around the guys, some of the guys that played, the former guys, being around some of the coaches and having a conversation with them. Some of the coaches relied on Coach Lane the way, he likes stuff to be done, and, the type of person he is. And they were kind of people and coaches I want to be around that can help me become a man in life.
And Coach Lane, you already mentioned him once. How big a mentor was he to you?
It was a big time father figure when it came down to coaching player, you know, not just me, but the other guys around the team. And he just put us in a position to strive for greatness, you know. Like, he taught us how to work hard. He taught me how to do the little things, you know, that help the bigger things in life. Just taught me a lot as a person.
You already knocked out one team from your state, Auburn, out of the way. Going to have Alabama coming up. What's it going to be like to come into Bryant-Denny Stadium, a place that you maybe have had thoughts about playing at one point? What's that going to be like, the emotions on that day?
There don't be too many emotions, you know. Like, when it's time to scrap up, it's time to scrap up, and we're ready to go. My main concerns is, you know, to stay humble and be ready for the game and well prepared. You know, it's gonna be an experience that I experienced in my life. You know, I never thought I'd have this opportunity to be an SEC college football player. And like, it's just, I'm learning every day. And like me, when I walk in that stadium, it just be like, it's go time.
A lot of Alabama natives on this roster. How fired up can you get when you play against a team from your home state? Are you just ready to show out in front of your family and friends and all the people who maybe watched you play in high school?
Not necessarily show out, but do everything Coach tells us to do, you know. Go out there and get the job done, handle my responsibilities, and do it at a highly way that can help the team get a win.
And that's the most important part, right?
Yes, exactly.
Coming out with a win.
Yeah.
Thank you, BJ. And Derunya was Alabama's Mr. Basketball in high school, so you know he can go up and get it. There you see the numbers on the big guy. He is a load, but on the road, not nearly as effective as he has been at home, and he hasn't seen the end zone since the Auburn game. And Alabama will also need to look out for former Northridge standout Malcolm Johnson. The Bulldogs tight end is an excellent player as well. Well, we've got more coming up here on Crimson Tide Kickoff, including a visit with Chelsea Barton on the quad. But next, we welcome the first of two former Crimson Tide defensive stars. Marvin Constant will be here to discuss his career and, of course, the play against LSU where it all ended. But he has rebounded nicely, has a book. We're going to talk with him next. Stay with us. Crimson Tide Kickoff continues live from Tuscaloosa, previewing Alabama, Mississippi State when we return. We're back on Crimson Tide Kickoff, and here's a look at the new college football playoff poll. Alabama, once again, outside the top four. Mississippi State, Oregon, Florida State, TCU, then Alabama, number 5. Of course, if the Tide keeps winning, they don't have to worry about that. They will be there in that playoff. And joining us now, speaking of playing for championships, a big part of Alabama's 1999 SEC championship, young man I know well, former Crimson Tide linebacker Marvin Constant. Marvin, good to have you with us, man.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Before we go back and talk about your career, just your thoughts on this program that Nick Saban's built. You know how hard it is to win a championship one time and be in position. I mean, Alabama now every year is battling for SEC and national titles.
He's done a phenomenal job at putting the pieces in place to build a prolonged success here. It's not like in other programs where they'll win a championship and, 2 years later they're looking for a new coach. He has done a phenomenal job in putting the right pieces together where it's year in and year out they're competing for the championship. Now he's built that culture where everybody expects championships every year. That's the only downside to it.
Spoiled. Well, you're a defensive guy. You love to lay the lumber. This is an offensive era in which we live, but still, I guess you get a lot of pleasure in seeing a team that still plays old school defense.
I love it. They play phenomenal defense week in and week out. Look at how they play the run. That's where it all starts in football. If you can't stop the run, you open yourself up for all types of deep threats on the pass and everything else. By being able to stop the run there, it forces teams to go against what they would normally do. So I think it creates a lot of matchup nightmares for teams because that's what most teams want to do. They want to run the ball early and put themselves in good position on second down. But the fact that it's hard to do that against Alabama, it changes the offensive coordinator's whole play call.
Right. It's something else. All right, let's go back in time because, we've talked so much and talked with Tyrone about it, but Tyrone Protho's injury has had so much publicity. But a similar situation for you, unfortunately. You came out of Central High School here in Tuscaloosa, all-state linebacker and fullback. Could have probably played either way, but you settled in at inside linebacker. In 1999, you were having a phenomenal season. The one in the LSU game, I think you already had 60-plus tackles. Right. And in that game, Alabama had a nice lead. LSU had come back, and here we are at the end of the game. They're on the goal line. 23-17, they score and kick an extra point. They win the game. And you made a game-saving tackle, but in the process, talk about what happened.
it was one of those just crazy things that happened. The play before, I watched one of my good friends, Kenny Smith, mess up his knee. So I was already thinking, you know, this is not a good game at this point. And then for me to go out there and do something even worse than what he did, I mean, that was something that I never thought would happen. You know we have to do this, you know, because if they score on us, it's over. Our season's pretty much done. There's no SEC championship game. There's nothing. So the only thought in my mind was we got to stop him no matter what. I didn't know that no matter what would be such an expensive price for me.
That's right. And at the time, you didn't know. I mean, people injure their knee, they come back, and you tried so hard. When did you realize that you weren't going to be able to come back, and what was that like?
It was that spring the following year. I just continued to have reoccurring problems, and it just never seemed to get better. The swelling always was there. It was always that issue. You know, there were some good days, but there were more bad days than good. So it just came to a point where I had to realize that, you know, it wasn't going to go the way I really thought it was going to go, you know, because I always thought I was going to be this superhuman guy that could never get hurt. And I was never able to recover from it the way that I thought that I would be able to.
Folks, Marvin could bench press 500 pounds. We're getting short on time, but you go from a potential NFL career to having to deal with this, adjust in life. You've written about it. You've got a book out, The Unraveling of a Man Who Bleeds Crimson. Tell us about it quickly.
It's about, you know, my battle with depression and all the issues that I dealt with from the standpoint of an athlete and that deep, dark period that I went through, how I got my life back on track, because there were some things that no one, you know, addressed with me. There were some issues that I never knew I would have. So for me, it was just a matter of, you know, telling my story so that it would hopefully help someone else down the road going through what I went through.
How can people get the book, Marvin?
They can find it on Amazon. Just you can search it, The Unraveling of a Man Who Bleeds Crimson, or you can search Marvin Constant, and it'll come up on Amazon.
Hey, good to see you, man.
It's a pleasure as always. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Marvin, for being with us. More CTKO is coming up, including a check-in on the tailgate scene over at the Quad with Chelsea Barton. That plus Mark McMillian, a.k.a. Mighty Mouse. He'll join us next when we come back. You stay with us.
Welcome back to Crimson Tide Kickoff. I'm Chelsea Barton out here live on the University of Alabama's Quad. I've spoken with fans on both sides of this SEC West matchup today, and they agree that this is the most anticipated game of the year for both teams. One thing's for sure, though, Bama fans are certainly glad that the Bulldogs won't be allowed to bring their most prized possessions into Bryant-Denny.
It doesn't make any sense. Cowbells, Bulldogs, where's that come from?
Cowbells, they're super annoying.
Cowbells are so obnoxious.
The cowbells, it's just terrible.
I don't really have much to say about those.
I think it is very trashy.
To be in that stadium with all those cowbells, it must be so awful.
It gets kind of immature.
You know, first thing comes to mind is being on a farm.
They're all rednecks.
I always think of Saturday Night Live, more cowbell.
I hate the cowbell. If I had to ring cowbell as a Bama fan, I probably wouldn't do it.
It shows they're a cow school. Well, you know, at the end of the day, at least we're not Mississippi, so.
Chelsea, that's great stuff. That's funny.
That rule certainly didn't keep the state fans from bringing the cowbells to Tuscaloosa. As I said earlier, they are ringing them out on the Quad, and the Walk of Champions was certainly ringing this morning on game day. That's all I've got for now. Gary, back to you.
All right, like I said, awesome stuff. Really funny stuff right there with Chelsea Barton. Thank you. All right, we've got another former Crimson Tide football standout with us now. Mark McMillian is on the phone. Hope to have you in person. Mark couldn't make it, but good to appreciate you being with us, man.
I appreciate you guys having me on today.
Hey, before we get to Alabama, now I want you to revisit your career. You came out of junior college. You weren't supposed to be big enough to play in the SEC. You weren't supposed to be big enough to play in the NFL, yet you had 23 interceptions in your NFL career at 5'7". How in the heck did you do it?
Just a lot of hard work and determination. And like I said, I learned from one of the best coaches in the country was Gene Stallings and Brother Oliver. So I had a great group of guys that helped me out. Made my job a lot easier with Curry and Copeland up front as well.
I know you missed the national championship by 1 year. You were already in the NFL in '92, but '91 you could kind of see it coming, couldn't you, Mark?
Yeah, we had a good team going. I think we finished 10-1, 11-1, or something like that, which kind of set it up for those guys to run the table. They still throw it in our face about us, setting the table for them. But I got an opportunity to see the game because we played the Saints that same weekend. So I got an opportunity to see the guys and then see them come out on the field and be able to see me play in my first NFL playoff game was kind of exciting as well.
Well, you go on to the NFL, people might not remember this. If you were playing today, you probably wouldn't have been drafted. There were only 7 rounds, but there were more than you got drafted in the 10th round. And you made it happen for the Eagles and several other teams. But talk about your mindset when you got that shot to play at the highest level.
I was excited. Got an opportunity to get drafted. Me and Saran Safety actually got drafted by the same team. Obviously, he was a higher pick than I was, but being a 10th round draft pick and, like I said, playing in the SEC week in and week out was a battle, and kind of prepared me for the next level because I was playing against pretty much the same guys with the same speed, just a lot older and more mature. But like I said, I was blessed with tremendous guys around me. I had Reggie White on one side, Randy Cunningham throwing the ball, so I came into a good situation.
Yeah, you guys had some great teams. All right, this Alabama team, and I know you're a DB, so you love watching Nick Saban work with this secondary, all the combination coverages that they run. They still play a lot of man. And just talk about this Alabama defense, the secondary in particular, what makes them so good?
The secondary getting better each week. It seems like I'm always holding up breath every time the ball goes in the air with all the rule changes. And, Nick teaches an aggressive style as far as the corners and the safeties. And the way they're calling the game now is kind of tough for these guys to even cover somebody. So with all the combination coverages that Nick throws at these guys, it's pretty amazing to see when it all comes together. I can see it at LSU. To win like that on the road and then winning overtime with them throwing the ball 4 straight times and coming away with the victory was very impressive.
Well, Mark, we appreciate the time. Next time we got to get you in person, man.
Oh yes, sir, man. We make it to that national title game, man. Got to make sure that I'll bring all the boys on by too.
All right, Mark McMillian joining us. Our thanks to him. Coming up on Crimson Tide Kickoff, we'll have a visit with Jen Chapman, who will talk with our resident Mississippi State fan at WVUA-TV. That's coming up after the break. And you may hear them some tonight, but technically the Mississippi State Cowbells are banned from Bryant-Denny Stadium, but I wouldn't be surprised if some people manage to get them into the stadium. Like we were talking about earlier, Mississippi State and their Cowbells, it's a tradition, but you know what? They're not supposed to get them in the stadium. Alabama will do their best to keep them out, but they always manage to anyway. But there's no rule against them outside the stadium, and Jen Chapman is standing by now with more on the Cowbells. Jen?
That's right, Gary. They're not allowed to have the Cowbells in the stadium, but we've been hearing them all morning. I think I've got one behind me. There you go. And right now we've got 2 little guys that came from Mississippi, best friends, but a little bit of a feud right now. What's your name?
Bash. And Gabe.
And Gabe obviously likes Alabama, and Bash going for Mississippi State. And what is such a big deal for you guys today? This is your what?
This is our big game.
Big game, and it's your first time at a college football game?
Yes, ma'am.
Crazy. You guys picked like the best one of the year probably. So pretty cool. How has this affected your friendship? Are you guys going to talk to each other? What's it going to be like?
Stay the same. Nothing's going to happen to us.
Did you make a bet on the game, though? You should maybe bet, like, if Alabama wins, he's got to do something. What do you think?
Nah. He's not going to bet because he knows we're going to win.
Oh, there's trash talking. Well, that's great. We've got so many fans out here today. Paula, you guys know I'm going to love this, came all the way from
Wisconsin.
And she had a huge sign that said, Wisconsin loves the Tide. And so she also knows Eddie Lacy, and he is, there we go, she's got his jersey on. So there is some love there, too. And Paula, are you laughing about people saying how cold it is here?
Oh, my goodness. This is like summer in Wisconsin, I'm just saying. This is beautiful weather.
So suck it up, everybody. We're fine here. And Paula, what do you think about today's game? Is this one you guys planned before the season to come? This is one of the best games of the year.
I certainly did. My daughter is a freshman at the University of Alabama. And this is only my second game because, you know, I don't know really anything about SEC football. It's all about the Big Ten. So we're so excited to be here. We're so excited to represent the University of Alabama. Roll Tide.
Well, after moving here a month ago from Wisconsin, they told me that the Big Ten is actually the Little Ten. So I've kind of had to deal with that a little bit. But everybody here is going to get a big welcome to SEC football. Guys, can you make some noise behind me? Are you guys excited? All right, Gary, they're ready to go.
They absolutely are, Jen. Thank you so much. Well, you know, people thought He had disappeared when the season began, but sophomore tight end O.J. Howard is beginning to heat up here in the November stretch run. He's the focus of this week's Player Spotlight with Andrew Clare.
He looks like a defensive lineman, but runs like a wide receiver. Sophomore tight end O.J. Howard is beginning to realize his potential.
I think I've really improved on my blocking, and little things about running routes, little details. Came a long way since last year, of course.
The Prattville native was able to make some big catches down the stretch last week in the overtime win at LSU.
Blake, seeing me open first as an option, it was the same routes we usually run, but I think this time it was LSU, the defense they were in, allowed me to become open. So Blake, he noticed that and gave me the ball.
This will be the first time that Howard will face the #1 team in the country, and it will be the first time since 2011 that Alabama will host #1. Howard says in order to beat the #1 team in the land, the Tide need to play aggressive against the Mississippi State defense.
They feed off the defensive line. Basically, a lot of big guys up front, have 32 sacks for the season, lead the nation. So we had to get a good push up front and be able to run the ball against their defense.
The Tide is a completely different monster when they play at home. Howard says the team is more relaxed and comfortable when playing in Bryant-Denny Stadium.
For me, I think we're at home. The crowd's not as loud as on the road, of course, and we do a great job of getting our signals in. We can hear very well, make a lot of audibles at the line of scrimmage. Versus on the road, it's always loud. A lot of people, can't really hear the plays, get the signals. So at home, we get crowds to our advantage.
For Crimson Tide Kickoff, I'm Andrew Clare.
Thank you, Andrew. Here's a look at O.J. at home versus on the road. A big difference. The only 2 catches here at Bryant-Denny Stadium came against Florida. Maybe that will change today. We're getting close to wrapping up CTKO, but we still have much more game breakdown coming up. Next, we'll welcome Chris Stewart from the Crimson Tide Sports Network to get a final look at this big game. We'll also talk about Blake Sims. How good has this guy been at Bryant-Denny Stadium? We'll talk about that and more coming up on the show. Stay with us. More CTKO right after this. We're back on Crimson Tide Kickoff. Last week, we may have seen a glimpse into the legacy that Blake Sims will leave at Alabama. A special ending to a game, 4th quarter drive, no timeouts. He got a score, and he got it done. Got it into overtime, and Alabama got the victory. A big, big day for Blake Sims, but he knows there's plenty left to play for down the stretch.
I think this game can go in history. And one thing that the leadership and as a team, we said that this year when we're done, we want everybody talking about this team right here, the great things that we did, because nobody really thought that we would be where we at right now. And we're getting close to the end, and we just got to keep driving hard. Even though we got bruises here and there, we still got to keep pushing, because that's where the best players come from.
And here are Blake's numbers inside the friendly confines of Bryant-Denny. He has been remarkable. 1,109 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, just 1 pick, 153 yards rushing with 3 touchdowns. Certainly, Alabama needs that trend to continue today. Well, now a guy that is a good friend of the show, and also you know him well from his radio and television work with the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Sideline reporter, basketball play-by-play, Chris Stewart. A lot of other hats, too, that you wear.
It's a lot like marriage, man. I do whatever I'm told to do.
Well,
and thankful that they tell me to do
You're
something.
going to have a demanding wife today, because I know you got a lot to do. And let's start with what's at hand. This football game today. I was talking with Coach Battle earlier. Teams play all year to try to get themselves in this position. Fortunately, Alabama seems to be here every year, but 3 games left, and it's all right there. I mean, Alabama controls its own destiny.
You and I get a chance to speak to a lot of groups before the start of the season, and I get asked, do we have a shot? And I said, I think you've got to be good to be in the discussion at the beginning of the year. You've got to be great to be in the mix late. But you got to be lucky to win it all. And luck sometimes means losing at the correct time and also salvaging a game like Alabama did last weekend when you don't play your best, don't play, frankly, very well at all on one side of the ball for the majority of the night, and then find a way to get it done late. So I think the fact that they won and the way in which they won that game will give them a tremendous lift coming into this one against a very, very good football team.
I do too, Chris. And, momentum, we talk so much about it, but as they say in baseball, momentum's as good as your next day starting pitcher. In football, right. every game is different. But, as you said, you feel like there's something tangible that they can take, something that you can almost feel and see from that win into today's game.
Well, you march down the field against a really good defensive team and a coordinator in John Chavis who's been as good as anybody in this league for the last 15 to 20 years. And you do it without T.J. Yeldon, You do it without Amari Cooper catching a pass. I think that just elevates this team tremendously. And again, we won't know until today, but I do think it was huge for the squad to be able to win the game in that manner. And they were already playing pretty well. Just didn't have a great game offensively. Maybe got out of rhythm in the first half with their play calling, and then in the second half, the fact that LSU did such a great job of hanging on to the football, it kept you from getting into any type rhythm until that final drive.
We were doing your radio, I guest appearance on your radio show every Friday, and we were talking yesterday about Mississippi State. And I know fans are used to seeing LSU, Auburn, Georgia, and maybe because it's the name Mississippi State, fans know they're number one but don't give them the same respect.
Right.
This is a really, really good football team. They've earned everything that they've received so far this year.
They do. I mean, Dan Mullen's done a great job. He's seen the blueprint in person. He was a part of that, a major part of that with Urban Meyer down at Florida. He's done a wonderful job building a team with the big-name guys like a Darunya Wilson, who was a highly recruited athlete, but taking a guy like Dak Prescott and seeing some of the same qualities that helped make him so successful with Tim Tebow as his quarterback. I think a lot of similarities, but maybe a better passer. And this is a dangerous, dangerous football team, because while he is certainly the straw that stirs the drink, they have got a lot of different weapons. Josh Robinson, tremendous running back. It's a team that if they can shore things up defensively, will be involved in the playoff, I believe, regardless of what happens today in Tuscaloosa.
Okay.
If it doesn't get out of hand.
All right, real quickly, I got to ask you about basketball. Last night, I know it's Towson, but you called the game. What was your takeaway from Alabama's first game under Anthony Grant this season?
We've seen them twice in a week, one of them an exhibition game, but they scored 80 points, and they only had 8 turnovers. That's a lot of possessions without having much negative take place. So it was fun to watch. It was great to see them get that start, but they got to build on it.
Western Carolina Monday night, I think, right?
Correct. Monday night, 8 o'clock.
All right, Chris, appreciate it.
Always great to see you. Thanks for having me, Jerry.
All right, coming up, we're almost done, but not quite. We've got a new edition of Scott on the Street and a final look at our chilly game day forecast with Richard Scott. You see it is hopping here in Tuscaloosa. We'll be right back.
Welcome into Scott on the Street. Number 1 team in the nation headed into Bryant-Denny Stadium this weekend. College game day. They're already here, as you can see. Atmosphere couldn't be better. We're here on the campus, University of Alabama. We're going to find out just what fans think about the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Scott on the Street starts right now. Patrick, Mississippi State, number 1 in the country. They had a really good year. But what do you think about when you think about Mississippi State? What kind of goes through your mind?
Personally, I just think Mississippi State's just tired of being the little brother in the SEC. They've had a very lucky season.
Oh, they've been irrelevant for 30 years now, and they're the number 1 team, but we're the ones favored. So I don't know how they think they're number 1. We're number 1, obviously.
Throw up. Yeah, literally, I think of throw up like they are baby vomit.
They have a tradition, I don't know if you've seen it or not, where they bring these cowbells as loud as they can, home, away. They even pay a fine for it every year, as a matter of fact, because it's their tradition. Yeah, they do. But what do you kind of think of when you hear and see the cowbells? What kind of goes through your mind?
Well, I just think that they have to use the cowbells to be louder than us because they have a smaller stadium than us. So we don't use the cowbells because we're just all around better and louder as fans.
It's pretty redneck, best way to put it, I think. I know a lot of Mississippi State fans, and their cowbells are very, very, very obnoxious, and it's a very country kind of redneck thing from Mississippi. Best way to put it.
We also have a trivia question. When was the last time Alabama lost to Mississippi State?
1952.
Probably 2004.
I'm gonna go 2000 and 2000.
I think that was it. I think it was either 2007 or 2000. I think 2007, wasn't it? That's correct. Yeah.
2007, first year of the Nick Saban era.
Thanks, Scott. Always entertaining, and Richard's always entertaining with his forecast. And it's chilly, but it's beautiful. What's the latest, Richard?
Yeah, Gary, it's really a pretty day out here. Lots of sunshine. Temperatures are slowly starting to warm up here on Tuscaloosa on the University of Alabama campus. But game day, all important forecast. What's going to happen? Let's check that out. Few clouds start rolling later this evening, especially tonight. but during the game, we're going to stay dry. Temperatures will be relatively cool in Brought-Denny. We're talking about low 50s at the 2:30 kickoff and back in the upper 40s to wrap up things at fourth quarter at Brought-Denny Stadium. But again, clouds start to move in, no rain to talk about, and winds will be light to calm, Gary. So not a bad game day forecast, but it will be one of our chillier games we've had this season.
All right, Richard, looking forward to it. Thanks for all the weather updates today. And that's going to do it for CTKO for this week. But don't forget, if you missed any of our interviews with Bill Battle, Marvin Constant, Chris Stewart, Mark McMillian, there will be replays leading up to kickoff right here on WVUA and later online at WVUATV.com. Special thanks to our guests, all the behind-the-scenes workers, and thank you for watching. We're about 30 minutes away from the team arriving at the stadium. And don't forget to tune back in tonight for WVUA Sports Saturday following the news at 10 with B.J. Milliken and Jen Chapman for a full recap of the Alabama-Mississippi State game. Until then, enjoy the game and roll Tide. Have a good afternoon, everybody.